And when I was the director of a startup program, I saw hundreds of startup applications with one thing in common. A lot of them were making the exact same mistakes that were costing them a huge amount of money and usually years of their time. So in this video, I wanted to talk about the 3 most expensive startup mistakes for early stage founders. Let's go. What's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name's Christian Peverelli and I am the co-director of We Are No Code. We teach non-technical entrepreneurs how to build and scale their companies. So if you want to become an entrepreneur, or if you're a startup founder who doesn't have technical skills, we are going to be giving you lots of tips and tricks on how to build your startup without having to code and without having to spend a huge amount of money. Now, the number one most expensive mistake the founders make is by far hiring developers to build their startups early on. Now, here's the way that the process usually goes. Someone comes up with an idea and they then understand that they need to either build an app, they need to build a website, they need to build some sort of a platform to be able to deliver their product to the end customer. And so naturally, their next reaction is to think,
since I don't know how to code, I don't know how to program, I'm not a web developer, I don't understand all these fancy words like HTML, CSS, etc., I'm gonna have to hire someone who has these skills to build the platform for me.
Now, the first thing is that the quotes you'll receive from some of these developers will be incredibly high. You're gonna be quoted between $30,000 and several $100,000 to build out the platform that you're learning to build. However, most likely, there is a big discrepancy between what you have in your head, what you believe the market actually needs, and the actual market realities when you launch your platform. So by hiring someone to go ahead and build the entire platform, the biggest mistake is that you're most likely building the wrong product for the wrong person, and there will be no demand once you launch that product in the market. And this is actually the reason why 90% of apps in the App Store are dead apps, haven't been used in the past 30 days. And it's the same reason why the number one reason startups fail is because there is no market need. Now, let's say that you went ahead and paid those first $30,000 to $50,000 to build out the platform. Now, unfortunately, this first bill is only the first of many. And because of product creep, but also that difference between what you have in your head and what the market needs, you will most likely have more and more bills, and you'll endlessly have to pay an additional $3,000, $2,000 here, $4,000 there. It really adds up quickly, and that's why this becomes the biggest money hole of all, is that we end up building the wrong thing for the wrong person, and then we're gonna have to backpedal, rebuild, unbuild, and it becomes complicated and it becomes very expensive. I've seen individuals spend hundreds of thousands of dollars building products that no one needs. So let's make sure that that's not you. A pro tip I give people when they approach some of these agencies is if you are not getting pushback on the scope of what you're trying to build. If these agencies or these individuals are not questioning what you're trying to build out of the gate when you are trying to build a first product to enter the market with, that means that they'll pretty much build anything that you want because they're simply hired by the hour and they don't really care if you're successful or not, unfortunately. So if you show those developers the entire plan that you have and they're happy to build the entire thing, that's a big red flag. The second big issue with building with developers is that they will build everything and usually will build a bloated product. So you're gonna end up with a product that looks something like this. And now this product is most likely gonna be a little clunky, and for sure it's gonna be difficult to scale because there are just too many functionalities behind it. Remember that the first Swiss Army knife that made hundreds of millions of dollars looked something more like this. So again, we're trying to build a minimum viable product, which is the minimum product that we can get to deliver the value to the customer and a product that that individual is willing and happy to pay for. And then what we're gonna do is to improve that product over time so that it can answer and it can solve that problem in a more effective way, and you can potentially even charge more for it. And to close off this point about hiring developers early stage being a big mistake, let's talk about another reflex. If people don't have those $30,000 to $50,000 to pay good developers, they're most likely gonna go to student developers or overshore developers. And what I've seen more times than not is people building very buggy products with what I call spaghetti code, and unfortunately are completely unusable, and although they are cheaper, they will not be usable and you will have to completely waste your money on that one. So don't fall into either of those traps. Early on, there is so much you can do to test the market, to start getting demand, to get first paying customers as you're building out a very minimum viable product. Now, the second most expensive mistake is to hire an agency to do marketing for you early stage. And this is actually usually connected to the first problem, which is building a product that people don't necessarily want, which means that when you bring it to market, You then think, hey, people are not flocking towards this. Probably the next thing I need to do is to invest in marketing. Now, marketing agencies usually have a 3-month minimum retainer and are going to charge you between $3,000 to $10,000 a month. So that's a huge expense for an early stage startup when you're still really trying to figure out either product market fit or product channel fit, which is finding the right channel of distribution for your product and how you can get it into the hands of your customers in the best and most effective way. And you're also looking for a huge amount of insight from those early customers to develop something that's going to be scalable and that you'll be able to grow to hundreds of millions of users, hopefully, right? So if you're doing paid marketing, it's very likely that you are quite disconnected from the end customer and you're not gonna be able to get that insight that you need to be able to build a really big company. So when we're building startups early stage, we're usually referring to finding the beachhead market, so the perfect segment that you have to go after. You're not going after anyone else except for that person until you've reached millions of dollars. And we also talk about the first 100 customers, which you're gonna go after manually. So you're essentially gonna figure out where offline and online do these individuals live, when do they interact. I'm gonna start up conversations and I'm gonna try to pitch my product to them and try to get sales this way. And in doing that process, you're actually backward engineering all the objections that people have when it comes to your product, which means that you're gonna learn very specifically how to talk about your product in a way that has the least market friction, that allows you to get to more customers and to have less objections when you sell to them. All very valuable lessons that you miss out on when you hire a marketing agency. So I hope you have not hired a marketing agency if you're in the first 6 months of building out your startup. If you're enjoying this so far, please give us a subscribe, a like, share it with a friend. I'm sure that it can add value to someone in your life right now. Now we're gonna jump into the third most expensive and most common startup mistake. And this is unnecessary early stage expenses. So let's talk about some of these expenses one by one. The first one is setting up a corporate entity. Now this can cost anywhere from a couple $100 to a couple $1,000. The problem here is that at the moment you have no idea if this business venture is going to be profitable or not. Personally, when I was a very early stage entrepreneur, I started a corporate entity for every single idea that I had. Imagine how expensive that becomes. And this was a trend that I saw that thousands of other founders were doing as well. So the first time that you want to really start the corporate entity is after having tested out the market. And usually it's because you need an entity to be able to open a bank account. So don't get ahead of yourself, and as soon as you have an idea for a business, you start a corporate entity. Now another expense is lawyers. I had a friend and she was building an awesome startup in the healthcare space, and she'd gotten the advice from old business people to essentially get all of her legal documentation very clear and in order before anything. She ended up spending $15,000 on lawyers and had them on retainer for $5,000 a month after that. Now this puts a huge strain on the company. There's actually a law firm called Cooley, which is one of the biggest law firms for tech startups. It has a section called Cooley Go, where you can leverage their templates and be able to actually create a lot of that paperwork, create a lot of even investment documentation, co-founder contracts, everything you're looking for without having to hire expensive lawyers. And if you absolutely need lawyers for some reason or another, you can usually actually negotiate a deferred payment of their fees, up to about $15,000 in deferred fees. And this comes when you pitch your company to them and you really convince them that this is an opportunity that's going to make money. They're willing to place a bet on you. We also have expenses like patents and trademarks, which early on are just gonna cost you a lot of money, are gonna take a lot of time, and they're frankly not gonna really help you out until you have a revenue generating business that now calls for some of these additional expenses. So I hope that was quite clear and that you're gonna avoid those expensive mistakes. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, see you next time. Take care.